Marcus endured a searing humiliation on that flight, his dignity trampled solely because of his skin color. Every callous remark and disdainful glance chipped away at his identity, leaving him to grapple with the raw sting of injustice. This heartbreaking journey into the depths of prejudice will pull you in, compelling you to question what true respect and fairness really mean. What happened next shocked everyone and set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Stay with me, this is a story you need to hear. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you find this story impactful, don't forget to subscribe for more. The bustling airport was alive with a symphony of sounds and colors as the early morning light streamed through towering glass panels. The terminal floor gleamed under the soft glow of overhead lights, reflecting the hurried steps of travelers and the steady rhythm of rolling suitcases. The air carried a blend of fresh coffee, a hint of warm pastries from a nearby bakery, and the ever-present clean scent of polished floors. Amid the organized chaos, there was an undercurrent of tension, a subtle reminder that beneath the veneer of routine, life was anything but ordinary. In a quiet corner near the boarding gate, Tara moved with deliberate grace as she adjusted her crisp uniform and double-checked the day's flight details. Her deep brown eyes, thoughtful and sometimes tinged with a quiet sadness, spoke of years of dedication and sacrifice. Known for her strict professionalism and a compassionate demeanor, Tara had earned the respect of both colleagues and passengers. Yet, as she meticulously prepared for the journey ahead, there was a flicker of uncertainty in her mind, a hint that the life she led might be intertwined with secrets she had not yet uncovered. Tara's routine was as precise as the ticking of a clock. Each movement was deliberate, each action measured. As she strolled through the corridor, her gaze met that of Samuel, a senior flight attendant whose calm smile and quiet wisdom had often smoothed over even the most turbulent situations. Their brief nod of acknowledgement was more than a greeting. It was a silent pact to uphold the dignity and safety of everyone on board. The soft murmur of their conversation soon merged with the ambient sounds of boarding announcements and the rustle of travel documents, creating a backdrop of normalcy that belied the undercurrents of unrest. Outside, the boarding gate began to fill with passengers from all walks of life. Among them was Marcus, a tall, dignified man whose quiet presence commanded respect. His careful steps and steady gaze hinted at a lifetime of challenges and hard-won resilience. Marcus had traveled many times before, each journey marked by both hope and the scars of a world that had not always treated him fairly. As he settled into his seat near the front of the cabin, his eyes, dark and reflective, told stories of battles fought against injustice, of silent struggles that demanded a dignity often denied by society. The gentle hum of conversation, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter or sigh of resignation, filled the space. Yet beneath this surface murmur lay unspoken tensions. Passengers exchanged fleeting glances and half-smiles, their expressions betraying memories of past encounters with prejudice and discrimination. Each face, every subtle expression, was a silent narrative of hope, hurt, and the enduring quest for respect. Even as the routine of boarding continued, it was impossible not to sense that the day was pregnant with possibilities that might soon shatter the confines of everyday normality. Tara's thoughts wandered briefly to memories of her own childhood, a time when dreams of soaring among the clouds danced in her heart. Raised in a modest home by a single parent, she had learned early on that life demanded both strength and empathy. The lessons of hard work, humility, and kindness had carried her through many obstacles, guiding her to a career where every flight was more than just a journey. It was an opportunity to connect with the myriad human stories that unfolded in the cramped aisles of an airplane. Yet, as she reviewed the flight schedule and the final boarding lists, a nagging feeling of disquiet crept in, a subtle reminder that perhaps there was more to her existence than the well-rehearsed routine of safety checks and polite greetings. She thought to herself, another busy day. I must ensure everything goes smoothly. Yet even as these words echoed in her mind, a deeper voice whispered of untold truths and hidden connections. It was as if beneath her practiced exterior, a dormant secret stirred, one that linked her to the very soul of the airline in ways she could scarcely imagine. These thoughts were fleeting, almost imperceptible, yet persistent enough to leave her with an unsettling sense of anticipation. As the final boarding call echoed through the terminal, a palpable energy surged among the passengers. The atmosphere shifted subtly, the everyday chatter giving way to a quiet, expectant stillness. Tara moved briskly along the aisles, her footsteps echoing softly on the polished floor. Each greeting was warm and measured, each smile a reassurance that all was well. But beneath that calm exterior, a spark of defiance had ignited within her, a spark triggered by a harsh remark that had sliced through the normal cadence of the morning. It happened suddenly, a few sharp words directed at Marcus that rang out with unexpected cruelty. The tone was cold, laced with a prejudice that seemed out of place in an environment that prided itself on service and decency. The rebuke was brief, almost lost in the general clamor, yet its impact was immediate. For a moment, the usual rhythm of the boarding process faltered. Eyes darted from one passenger to another, and the silence that followed was heavy with unspoken questions and rising tension. Tara's heart skipped a beat as she absorbed the shock of the moment. In that split second, a fierce, protective instinct surged within her. She glanced toward the source of the remark, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. There was something deeply wrong, an injustice unfolding before her eyes, a wrong that resonated with memories of a world she had long tried to leave behind. As she moved closer, her mind raced with questions about the nature of duty, the expectations placed upon her, and the broader implications of a society that could still allow such hurtful words to be uttered. The incident was a small crack in the otherwise orderly facade of the day, yet was enough to awaken a dormant sense of rebellion in Tara. Could it be that, in her own meticulous pursuit of professionalism, she had become complicit in a system that overlooked the human cost of its rigid rules? The thought lingered, uncomfortably persistent, as she continued her rounds with renewed focus. Her every step now carried an added weight, a silent promise to safeguard not just the physical well-being of her passengers, but their dignity as well. As the murmurs of discontent began to ripple through the cabin, Samuel's gentle voice reached her ear. "Sometimes I wonder if we're missing something deeper behind our everyday tasks," he said quietly, his tone reflective. Tara managed a small, knowing smile replying, "Perhaps it's just the way things are, Samuel. We do what we must." Yet even as she spoke, the memory of that harsh remark against Marcus pricked at her conscience, stirring emotions that were both old and raw. Marcus, for his part, sat with a calm that belied the inner turmoil he must have felt. His eyes, though seemingly resigned, held a quiet determination. He had learned to endure, to rise above the cruelty that life sometimes threw his way. Every time he boarded a flight, he clung to the hope that this time, at least, he might be met with the respect he so rightfully deserved. His silence was not weakness, it was the measured strength of a man who had weathered storms both within and beyond the confines of an airplane cabin. Outside, the aircraft's engines hummed a gentle prelude to the journey ahead. The soft murmur of conversation, the occasional clink of utensils from a service cart, and the steady murmur of the ventilation system all blended into a background score that seemed to underscore the fragile balance between order and chaos. Every detail of the environment, the worn fabric of the seats, the gentle illumination of the overhead panels, the distant view of the runway, was imbued with a quiet beauty that masked the undercurrents of tension swirling beneath the surface. Tara's mind drifted as she made her rounds, recalling the long nights of study and the rigorous training that had prepared her for this life. She remembered the gentle encouragement of her mother, whose soft words had taught her to see the good in every person, no matter how society chose to label them. Those memories were a source of strength, a reminder that empathy could be a powerful force against injustice. Yet, as she looked around at the faces of her fellow travelers, she couldn't help but wonder if that empathy was enough to bridge the deep divides that had been carved into the fabric of their world. In one quiet moment near a window overlooking the bustling tarmac, Tara paused to gather her thoughts. The airplanes outside moved slowly, their silhouettes graceful against the vast expanse of the sky. The scene was both ordinary and profound, a daily miracle of flight that defied gravity and connected distant lives. In that reflective pause, Tara caught a glimpse of herself in the glass, a woman defined by her duty, yet harboring secrets that even she could not fully comprehend. The sky, endless and full of possibility, seemed to whisper promises of change, of destinies intertwined with the very air she breathed. Unbeknownst to Tara, there was an unspoken connection between her and the airline that went far deeper than the role of a flight attendant. Each carefully executed procedure, every reassuring smile, carried an authority that was almost second nature to her. It was as if she were more than just a servant of routine. She was a guardian of the airline's legacy, a legacy built on values of service, respect, and the unyielding belief in the goodness of people. This hidden authority was a part of her, woven into the fabric of her being, yet shrouded in mystery. She had never questioned it, not until moments like these forced her to confront the possibility that her life was destined for something much greater. As the final boarding call resonated through the cabin, the energy among the passengers grew more palpable. Every individual, whether knowingly or not, was connected by the shared anticipation of the journey ahead. The interplay of light and shadow inside the aircraft, the soft glow from overhead lights mingling with the deeper, darker corners of the cabin, mirrored the internal struggles of those on board. The bright, hopeful expressions were tempered by the hidden sorrows and silent battles that each person carried. In this delicate balance of optimism and apprehension, every small gesture became a statement, every exchanged glance a spark of unspoken understanding. In a quiet corner of the cabin, Samuel leaned in to speak softly with Olivia, another attentive attendant whose warm smile had soothed many anxious souls. "There's a feeling today that goes beyond the routine," Samuel murmured. "It's as if the very air is charged with a promise that we are on the cusp of something life-changing." Olivia's eyes, gentle and knowing, met his as she replied, "I feel it too. Sometimes I think our jobs are more than just duties. They're part of a bigger story that we're only beginning to understand." Their words, though spoken in hushed tones, carried the weight of a profound realization that each of them, in their own way, was an integral part of a larger narrative, a narrative that was about to challenge everything they thought they knew. Meanwhile, Marcus's thoughts wandered back to the many flights he had taken over the years. Each journey was a tapestry of small victories and silent battles, a continuous struggle against a world that too often saw him only for the color of his skin rather than the content of his character. Every time he took his seat, he carried with him the hope that this flight might bring a fresh start, a moment of recognition that transcended superficial judgments. His eyes, dark and reflective, held the memory of past hurts, yet also burned with an inner resolve to keep moving forward, no matter the obstacles. As the aircraft inched closer to the runway, a profound silence settled over the cabin, a silence that spoke of collective anticipation and hidden fears. The soft hum of the engines grew into a steady, rhythmic pulse, echoing the beating of hearts filled with hope and trepidation alike. Tara's footsteps slowed as she reached a small aisle near the front, where she took a moment to absorb the scene around her. Every detail, the subtle creak of the overhead compartments, the quiet rustle of seat fabric as passengers shifted in their seats, the distant, reassuring roar of the engines, formed a mosaic of life in transit. In that moment, Tara felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, a reminder that every action, every word, had the power to shape destinies. Deep inside, a part of her could not shake the feeling that she was meant for more than the well-worn path of a flight attendant. There were flashes of memory, fleeting yet insistent, that hinted at a legacy far greater than she had ever imagined. These moments, brief as they were, carried sense of destiny that tugged at her very core, a quiet promise that the day, and the journey ahead, would reveal truths that could no longer be ignored. Though the thought both frightened and intrigued her, Tara pushed it aside, focusing on the immediate needs of the passengers and the delicate task of ensuring that order reigned in a space where emotions ran high. As the wheels of the aircraft met the smooth surface of the runway, the final moments before takeoff became charged with meaning. The cabin, bathed in a soft glow, was a microcosm of life itself, a blend of hope and despair, of dreams and harsh realities. In that charged silence, every passenger, from the timid to the resolute, was poised on the brink of an experience that promised to reshape their understanding of the world. And in that moment, Tara's eyes met Marcus's once more, a silent exchange of mutual recognition and unspoken solidarity. It was a look that said, without words, that they both understood the stakes at hand and the possibility that this flight was more than just a journey through the skies. With a final, steadying breath, Tara resumed her duties. The day was just beginning, and though routine still held its place, an undercurrent of change pulsed through the cabin. Every whispered conversation, every subtle glance, and every carefully measured smile was a prelude to the transformation that lay ahead. As the engines roared to life and the aircraft began its smooth acceleration down the runway, the promise of a new beginning shimmered in the early morning light, a promise that would soon force each soul on board to confront truths about justice, empathy, and the hidden depths of their own identities. In that fleeting, potent moment, the ordinary world of travel gave way to an extraordinary journey, one that would challenge every preconception and test every limit. Tara, Marcus, Samuel, Olivia, and all the passengers were now part of a larger story, a story woven with threads of courage, defiance, and the quiet hope that even in the midst of injustice, a spark of transformation could ignite a brighter future. As the plane soared into the open sky, carrying with it the collective dreams and silent struggles of those on board, the day's journey promised not only physical distance but a profound internal voyage, a journey that would forever change the lives of all who dared to believe in the possibility of a better tomorrow. The steady hum of the engines filled the cabin as the aircraft sailed high above a patchwork of green fields and winding rivers. Outside, the vast blue sky stretched endlessly, offering a deceptive calm that contrasted sharply with the growing tension inside. The earlier incident still hung in the air like a stubborn shadow, its echoes lingering in every whispered conversation and every furtive glance exchanged between passengers and crew. Tara moved through the narrow aisle with a renewed determination, though her eyes betrayed a conflict that she could not quite quell. Every step felt heavy, burdened by the weight of unspoken words and unresolved feelings. She passed by rows of seated passengers who now seemed to watch her more intently, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The brief flash of confrontation with Marcus, the black passenger whose dignified silence belied a deep hurt, had unsettled everyone on board. Now, as the flight continued, the cabin pulsed with a subtle but unmistakable undercurrent of disquiet. Marcus himself sat in his seat, his eyes fixed on the window, but his mind was far from the serene view outside. He replayed the harsh words he had received over and over again, each repetition intensifying his sense of injustice. His heart pounded with a mixture of anger and sorrow, and he could feel the stares of fellow travelers, some sympathetic, others judgmental. He clenched his fists tightly, trying to rein in the rush of emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. Every time he glanced down at his worn boarding pass, he was reminded of the many times he had been judged not by his actions, but by the color of his skin. In the galley, Samuel and Olivia exchanged concerned looks as they restocked the refreshments and tidied up the service area. Samuel's gentle voice broke the silence. "There's something in the air today that isn't right," he murmured, his eyes scanning the cabin. Olivia nodded slowly, her brow creased with worry. "I can feel it too. It's like we're all holding our breath, waiting for something to happen." Their words were laden with an unspoken understanding that events were unfolding beyond the usual routine of flight service. Tara paused momentarily at a service cart, her thoughts drifting to the encounter with Marcus. A part of her wanted to reach out, to offer him solace, yet another part of her was bound by duty and the unyielding rules of the airline. "I must maintain order," she repeated softly to herself. Yet the memory of his hurt eyes and the sting of those words clashed violently with that sense of duty. In the quiet recesses of her mind, she wondered if the very rules she enforced were the root of the injustice she felt deep inside. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the aircraft entered a smoother cruising altitude, and the ambient noise softened into a low murmur. Passengers settled back into their seats, though an undercurrent of tension remained palpable. It wasn't long before the silence was punctured by a hesitant voice. "Miss, may I speak with you?" The soft request came from Marcus, whose tone was calm, yet edged with quiet determination. His eyes, dark and searching, met Tara's as he spoke. I don't understand why you spoke to me so harshly earlier. I come here just like everyone else, hoping for a little respect." Tara's heart tightened. She forced herself to meet his gaze, though the conflict roiled beneath her composed exterior. I was only following the guidelines," she replied, her voice measured but failing to mask a tremor of regret. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of a duty that both confined and defined her. Inside, she chastised herself for the coldness that had slipped into her tone, a remnant of the tension that had surged in that fraught moment. Marcus's expression hardened slightly, his eyes reflecting a mixture of hurt and resolve. "Guidelines should never be a shield for disrespect," he said softly. "I deserve to be treated as a person, not as a number or stereotype." His voice was steady, each word measured as if he were challenging not just her, but an entire system that had long oppressed him. For a moment, the cabin seemed to hold its breath. Nearby, Samuel exchanged a worried glance with Olivia, both sensing that the conversation was only the beginning of something deeper and more complex. Tara, caught between duty and empathy, felt a surge of conflicting emotions. She wanted to explain herself, to offer an apology, but the rules of her position left her with little room for personal intervention. "I understand your feelings truly," she began, her tone softening. "But sometimes in the midst of our busy schedules, we forget that every word we speak matters. I am sorry if my tone made you feel disrespected." Her apology, though genuine, did little to ease the tension that had taken root in Marcus's eyes. He gave a slight nod, but his silence spoke volumes, a silence filled with unspoken pain and the burden of past wounds. As the flight progressed, the earlier confrontation seemed to permeate every interaction. Passengers whispered quietly among themselves, their conversations laden with a mix of speculation and concern. Some exchanged disapproving looks at Tara, while others offered sympathetic glances to Marcus. The incident had sparked a subtle, simmering debate about respect, duty, and the responsibilities of those in positions of authority. In a quieter corner of the plane, Samuel and Olivia found a brief moment to talk away from the prying eyes of the passengers. "I've known Tara for years," Samuel confided in a hushed tone, "and I've never seen her like this before. There's something different about her today." Olivia frowned thoughtfully. Maybe it's the stress of the job, or perhaps something more personal is weighing on her. You know, sometimes our roles define us in ways we don't fully understand until it's too late. Their conversation drifted into a reflective silence, both acutely aware that their world was shifting ever so slightly. They had always prided themselves on their ability to maintain order and compassion, yet today the balance between the two seemed precarious. It was as if the very fabric of their daily routine had been torn, revealing hidden truths and long-buried emotions. Meanwhile, Tara's internal struggle deepened. In the privacy of her thoughts, she recalled long nights spent studying airline regulations, the countless hours of training that had prepared her to enforce rules without question. But those same rules, designed to maintain order and safety, now felt oppressive, a chain that bound her to a system that often overlooked the nuances of human dignity. There were moments when she caught her own reflection in the small window of a service cabinet, seeing not just a diligent flight attendant, but a woman with a hidden legacy. A legacy that, if revealed, might change everything. At one point during the flight, the aircraft encountered a brief bout of turbulence, a sudden shudder that sent a ripple of unease through the cabin. The lights flickered momentarily, and the murmurs of the passengers turned to anxious whispers. Tara moved quickly to reassure everyone, her voice calm and steady as she announced, "Please remain seated and fasten your seatbelts. Everything is under control." Yet even as she spoke, her mind raced. The turbulence was a physical reminder that even the most controlled environments could be disrupted in an instant, much like the fragile balance of respect and authority that she was now questioning. In the midst of the minor chaos, Marcus's seat creaked as he shifted, and he caught Tara's eye once more. In that silent exchange, there was a mutual recognition of vulnerability, a shared understanding that both had been scarred by the harshness of a world unwilling to change. "I know it isn't easy for you," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a hint of both challenge and compassion, "to always do what's expected, even when it goes against your own heart." His words were careful, laden with the wisdom of someone who had endured too much, yet they cut deeply into the fabric of the moment. Tara hesitated, her eyes flickering with an emotion she struggled to contain. "Sometimes we must play our part even when it hurts," she replied, her tone low and almost defeated. It was a statement that resonated with both resignation and a silent promise, an acknowledgement that every action, however small, could either build or break the bonds of trust between people. As the flight continued, more subtle setbacks began to emerge. A passenger in the back, agitated by the unfolding events, raised his voice in protest about the delay in service. His outburst, though quickly subdued by another crew member, added another layer of tension to an already fragile situation. The cabin became a microcosm of society, a place where every individual's pain, hope, and anger mingled in a volatile mix. Each whispered conversation and sharp glance served as a reminder that beneath the veneer of calm, the human spirit was capable of both great resilience and profound discord. In the galley, As Samuel restocked supplies and Olivia prepared the next round of beverages, they couldn't help but exchange worried looks every time they heard raised voices or saw a tense expression among the passengers. "It feels like we're all on the edge today," Olivia remarked softly, as if a single spark could set everything ablaze. Samuel nodded, his eyes distant. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can be the spark that reminds us why we're here. But other times it only deepens the wounds that we try so hard to hide. Their conversation, though brief, was a quiet meditation on the complexities of duty and compassion. They had seen enough in their years of service to know that the human heart was often a battleground for conflicting emotions. Yet, as they continued their work, a silent hope lingered that amidst the rising tension, there was still a chance for healing and understanding. Tara, too, wrestled with her inner turmoil. In the solitude of her thoughts, she recalled the many times she had been told that her role required a certain detachment, a cool, objective adherence to protocol. But the incident with Marcus had shattered that illusion. Each time she looked into his eyes, she saw not just a passenger, but a mirror reflecting her own doubts and desires. There was a part of her that longed to break free from the confines of routine, to embrace a truth that went beyond the rigid structure of the airline's rules. A truth that whispered of legacy, responsibility, and a deeper connection to every soul on board. As the hours passed, subtle hints of a dramatic shift began to emerge. A seasoned passenger in the aisle, who had been quietly observing the unfolding events, leaned forward and murmured to the person beside him, "There's something about this flight that feels different. Almost as if it's more than just a journey from one place to another." His words, though soft, carried an undercurrent of foreshadowing, a sense that the events of this flight were only a prelude to something far greater. The tension in the cabin slowly morphed into a quiet expectancy, a shared anticipation of an inevitable turning point. Even the steady cadence of the aircraft's engines seemed to echo this sentiment, each vibration resonating with the collective heartbeat of everyone on board. In that suspended moment, Tara felt a strange calm wash over her. A calm born not of resignation, but of the profound realization that every challenge was an opportunity to redefine one's purpose. Her thoughts drifted back to a memory from years past, a memory of a conversation with her mentor, a wise woman who had once said, "True authority is not in the rules you enforce, but in the compassion you show." Those words, long buried under layers of duty and regulation, now stirred within her, urging her to see beyond the immediate conflict. Could it be that the very system she had dedicated her life to was in need of change? And could she, in her own small way, be the catalyst for that change? As the aircraft continued its journey through the heavens, the subtle undercurrents of discord began to intertwine with threads of hope and transformation. In a quiet exchange near the front of the cabin, Marcus spoke again, this time with a voice that trembled between anger and vulnerability. "I don't seek trouble, but I won't stand for being treated as less than I am," he declared, his eyes fixed on Tara as if searching for an answer in her gaze. "I believe that respect is earned through understanding, not through blind adherence to rules." His words resonated deeply in the confined space, leaving little room for denial. Tara's response was measured, her voice low and reflective. "I understand your pain, Marcus. I know the sting of being misunderstood and misjudged. I wish there were a way to bridge the gap between what is expected and what is just." Her admission was raw, stripped of any pretense, and in that moment, the boundaries between duty and empathy blurred. It was a confession of a heart caught in the crossfire of a system that prized order over individual worth. In the soft glow of the overhead lights, a quiet observer, a passenger who had remained silent until now, leaned forward and said, "Sometimes the truth lies hidden in the actions we take, even when we don't realize it." The remark, seemingly casual, struck a chord with many, as if it were hinting at secrets deeper than the surface conflict. A subtle murmur of agreement rippled through those nearby, each person pondering the possibility that there was more to Tara than met the eye. Outside the window, the sun began its slow descent, painting the clouds with hues of gold and crimson. The changing light cast long shadows in the cabin, mirroring the shifting emotions within. Tara found herself momentarily alone in the quiet of her thoughts, gazing out at the vivid tapestry of the evening sky. In that reflective silence, memories of her past, of long nights spent studying, of moments of doubt and defiance, merged with the present turmoil. She felt the pull of destiny, as if the very air around her was charged with the promise of a revelation that would alter everything she had known. At that moment, a gentle knock on the door of the crew's resting area signaled the arrival of another colleague, a young attendant named Nina, whose earnest eyes and sincere smile belied her relative inexperience. "Tara, are you all right?" Nina asked quietly, her concern evident in every word. The simplicity of the question, free from judgment or pretense, touched Tara deeply. "I'm trying to find my way," she admitted softly, almost to herself. "I've always followed the rules, but today, I wonder if the rules have become a barrier instead of a guide." Nina nodded, her youthful optimism mixing with a newfound understanding of the complexities that governed their lives high above the ground. Back in the main cabin, as conversations ebbed and flowed, the underlying tension began to build toward an unseen climax. Passengers exchanged knowing looks, as if each were privy to a secret that would soon burst forth. The interplay of light, shadow, and muted voices created a tapestry of anticipation, a fragile balance between the old order and the promise of transformation. Every interaction, every whispered word, was a piece of a puzzle that, once assembled, would reveal a truth too powerful to ignore. In the midst of these layered emotions, Tara's internal battle intensified. She recalled the stern lessons of protocol taught to her from the moment she donned her uniform. Yet the image of Marcus's pained eyes, the quiet courage of his stance, and the subtle solidarity among those around her, all spoke of a different kind of authority, a deeper, more humane leadership. It was as if the very fabric of the airline, woven with rules and regulations, was beginning to fray at the edges, giving way to a raw authenticity that demanded recognition. The minutes ticked by, each one laden with an almost palpable expectancy. Conversations grew quieter, more introspective. Even the occasional clink of a cup or the soft rustle of a page in a magazine seemed to echo the heartbeat of the aircraft, a steady reminder that life, with all its imperfections, continued to unfold in real time. And in that suspended moment, every soul on board, whether bound by the constraints of duty or the longing for personal freedom, felt the stirrings of a change that could not be undone. Tara, standing near the service cart once more, took a deep breath as she approached a small window in the galley. The reflection staring back at her was not just that of a flight attendant following orders, but of a woman carrying a secret, a legacy of authority and responsibility that she had never fully understood. In the soft reflection of the dimming light, hints of gold from a delicate necklace caught her eye, a subtle reminder of a world beyond the confines of regulations and uniformity. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if she could ever step beyond the role assigned to her and embrace the full spectrum of who she truly was. Even as the flight continued its course, the seeds of a dramatic twist were quietly taking root. The subtle interplay of emotions, the unspoken bonds forming between strangers, and the raw honesty of the exchanges that unfolded in hushed tones, all pointed to a moment when the truth would no longer remain hidden. Each character, Marcus with his unwavering dignity, Samuel and Olivia with their quiet wisdom, and even Nina with her budding compassion, was becoming part of a larger narrative that transcended the immediate conflict. In the final hours of the flight, as twilight gave way to the deep blue of night, the atmosphere in the cabin took on a reflective quality. The earlier turbulence, both literal and metaphorical, had given way to a calm that was laced with anticipation. The murmurs of conversation had dwindled to soft, thoughtful exchanges, and every individual seemed to be lost in their own contemplation of the events that had transpired. Tara, now nearing the end of her shift, felt a bittersweet mixture of relief and unresolved tension. She knew that the flight's journey was nearing its conclusion, but the internal journey she had embarked upon was far from over. In the quiet moments before the descent, she caught Marcus's "I once more." Their silent exchange was layered with meaning, a mutual recognition of shared pain, hope, and the possibility of redemption. Without a word, they acknowledged that the conflict was not merely a momentary lapse in civility, but a catalyst for deeper change. As the plane began its gradual descent toward its destination, the cabin was bathed in the soft glow of landing lights. The collective energy of the passengers shifted from one of subdued tension to one of cautious optimism. The revelations of the day, the harsh words, the silent understanding, the hints of a truth waiting to be unveiled, had left an indelible mark on everyone aboard. For some, it was a call to reevaluate long-held prejudices. For others, it was a reminder that even within the strict confines of duty, the human spirit yearned for genuine connection and understanding. In those final moments, as the aircraft taxied toward the gate, Tara felt a stirring of resolve. The conflict of the day had not been an isolated incident, but a mirror reflecting the larger struggles of a society in need of change. She realized that every interaction, no matter how fleeting, was an opportunity to bridge the divide between rule and compassion. And though she still wrestled with the burdens of responsibility and the hidden legacy that defined her, a small, persistent spark of hope now burned within her. As passengers began to disembark and the hum of conversation grew louder with relief and anticipation, the promise of a new beginning lingered in the air. The journey of this flight, with all its rising tension and subtle revelations, had sown the seeds of transformation in each heart on board. And as Tara closed the cabin door behind her, she carried with her not just the weight of duty, but also the quiet conviction that change, true, lasting change, often begins in most unexpected of moments. In the soft echo of departing footsteps and the murmur of final goodbyes, the story of this flight remained etched in the minds of all who experienced it, a story of quiet rebellion, of unspoken truths, and of the enduring struggle to find humanity amid the rigid confines of expectation. The seeds planted in that turbulent sky would one day grow into something far greater, a promise that every act of courage, every moment of empathy, could transform even the most established order. And so, as the night embraced the tarmac and the aircraft stood silent on the runway, a new chapter in their shared journey began to take shape, a chapter that would challenge assumptions, redefine authority, and ultimately reveal that the true measure of leadership lies not in enforcement of rules, but in the courage to stand up for what is right, even when it means questioning the very foundations upon which those rules were built. The descent began slowly, and the aircraft's wheels kissed the tarmac with a gentle thud, yet inside the cabin the atmosphere was anything but gentle. The soft murmur of passengers preparing to disembark was overlaid by an electric charge of anticipation and unresolved emotion. Outside, the evening sky burned with deep oranges and purples, a stark contrast to the inner turmoil of those on board. Tara moved through the aisle with careful, measured steps, her mind still a storm of conflicting thoughts. Every face she passed, every whispered conversation, served as a reminder of the day's events and of the unspoken question that now loomed large. Who is she, really? Marcus sat a few rows ahead, his eyes still fixed on the window, but his mind was no longer content to drift along with the clouds. The earlier confrontation had ignited something in him, a need for truth, a demand for accountability. His heart pounded as he replayed the words exchanged moments before, the sting of injustice still raw in his memory. As the plane's descent deepened, he rose from his seat and made his way slowly toward the front, each step a silent declaration that he would no longer be a bystander to his own pain. Near the galley, where Samuel and Olivia had quietly resumed their duties, a hushed conversation had already begun. Samuel's eyes, usually so calm and steady, now shone with an intensity that betrayed his concern. Olivia's gaze followed Tara's every movement as if searching for answers in the subtle curve of her smile or the weight in her posture. Even Nina, whose youthful optimism had carried her thus far, sensed that the day was nearing a turning point, a moment when all pretenses would have to fall away. When the aircraft finally touched down and the cabin lights brightened in welcome, a small cluster of passengers gathered near the door, their conversations low and urgent. In that charged moment, Marcus found himself standing before Tara as she checked the final details on her tablet. The silence between them was heavy, and for a long heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. "Miss," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the tremor of emotion, "I need to speak with you. Privately." His eyes, dark and earnest, locked onto hers with a challenge that was both respectful and insistent. Tara's expression flickered, a mixture of apprehension and something deeper, a regret, perhaps, or a hope for understanding. "Yes," she replied softly, lowering her voice as if to create a small sanctuary of truth amid the clamor of disembarking passengers. They stepped aside into a quieter corner of the terminal, away from the flow of hurried footsteps and casual greetings. The bright lights of the arrivals hall revealed the intricate details of the space, polished floors that caught the gleam of overhead fixtures, the soft murmur of voices carrying 1,000 separate stories, and a hush that fell as though nature itself recognized the gravity of this encounter. Marcus took a steadying breath before speaking. "Earlier today, your words, they hurt me deeply. I came here hoping for a bit of respect, but instead, I felt judged, dismissed. I don't understand why you would treat someone with such indifference, especially when all I ask is to be seen as a person." His voice wavered on the edge of anger and sorrow, a mixture that had become all too familiar in his life. Tara's eyes searched his face, and in that search she saw not only the pain of the moment, but the weight of years spent battling prejudice and expectation. For a moment, she hesitated, as if the truth she held within was too immense to share. Then, in a voice that trembled with both vulnerability and determination, she said, "Marcus, there's something I have to tell you, something I've kept hidden for a long time." A flicker of confusion passed through his eyes. "Hidden? What do you mean?" She took a measured breath, steadying herself against the barrage of memories and regrets. "I am not who you think I am. I have spent my life working as a flight attendant, adhering to every rule and regulation, all in order to understand and improve our airline. But the truth is, I am also the owner of this airline." Her voice was soft but carried a weight that filled the quiet space around them. For a long, suspended moment, silence reigned. Marcus's eyes widened in disbelief. The shock in his expression was unmistakable, a mixture of astonishment and a slow-burning anger that mingled with a dawning understanding. You're the owner," he repeated, the words tasting strange on his tongue. "Then why would you speak to me that way? Why did you allow that to happen?" Tara's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she replied, "I wanted to see our airline from every perspective, to understand the experiences of our passengers without the trappings of power influencing my actions. I donned the uniform of a flight attendant to be among you, to learn from you. I thought that by living among our passengers, I could truly grasp the challenges you face every day. I never meant to hurt you, Marcus. I wanted to be a part of your story, not to stand above you and judge you." Marcus's voice was raw with emotion as he pressed on, "But by following the rules so strictly, by treating me like I was less than human, you became part of a system that has oppressed me. I deserved better. I deserved respect, not a cold adherence to protocols that ignore the human heart." Her hands clenched at her sides as she struggled to convey the depth of her regret and the burden of her secret. "I know, and I am truly sorry. I thought that by being one of you, I could bridge that gap, to lead with empathy and fairness. But in doing so, I lost sight of the very humanity I sought to understand. I was blinded by my desire to learn, and in the process, I hurt you. I understand if you feel betrayed." Marcus looked down, the conflict evident in his furrowed brow and the tense set of his shoulders. It's hard to reconcile the image of a caring person with that of an owner who should be out there protecting us, not standing among us pretending to be just like everyone else. His tone softened slightly as he added, "I thought you were just one of us, a person who could be wrong, just like anyone. But knowing now that you hold so much power, it changes everything." The revelation hung between them, a seismic shift in the dynamics of their shared journey. Around them, the arrivals' hall seemed to slow, every distant sound echoing the profound transformation taking place in that moment. Samuel and Olivia, who had been passing by, paused as they noticed the intense exchange. Samuel's eyes met Olivia's in a silent understanding. They both recognized that this confrontation was a turning point not only for Marcus and Tara, but for everyone who had been affected by the day's earlier events. Tara continued, her voice earnest and laden with remorse. "I assumed that by experiencing life from the ground up, I could better shape policies that would foster true respect and fairness. But I never considered that my actions, no matter how well-intentioned, could perpetuate the very harm I sought to eliminate. I was so focused on learning that I neglected the immediate pain of my words. I now see that true leadership isn't about hiding behind a disguise. It's about owning up to your mistakes and using them to make things right." Marcus's eyes, still dark with unresolved hurt, searched her face for signs of insincerity, but found only raw honesty and deep regret. "I want to believe that you can change things, that your experience among us wasn't just an experiment, but a step toward a better future. But trust isn't easily rebuilt once it's been broken." A silence fell between them, heavy with the promise of redemption and the long road ahead. Finally, Marcus spoke again, his tone quieter now, as if offering a tentative olive branch. "If you truly want to make a difference, then you must show us that you are willing to change the system that allows these injustices to happen. Not just by experiencing our struggles, but by actively fighting against them. We need a leader who understands that respect is not earned by adhering to outdated rules, but by embracing our shared humanity." Tara nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears of both sorrow and resolve. "I will. I promise you, Marcus, I will do everything in my power to change the policies that have hurt so many. I want to create an environment where every passenger feels valued and heard, where our airline stands as a beacon of fairness and dignity. This incident, as painful as it has been, is a wake-up call. I will not let it be in vain. Around them, the murmurs of the crowd grew softer as the significance of the conversation seeped into the minds of those who had been watching. Samuel stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on Tara's shoulder. Tara, leadership means making difficult choices and facing uncomfortable truths. Today, you've shown courage in admitting your mistake and taking responsibility. That's the first step toward real change. Olivia joined in, her voice gentle yet firm. We all have our moments of weakness, but what defines us is how we respond to them. I believe that if we all work together, we can turn this moment into the beginning of something better. Nina, standing nearby with wide, thoughtful eyes, added softly, I believe that the best leaders are those who can learn from their mistakes and use them to create a more just world. This is your chance to lead by example, Tara. In that moment, the secret that had burdened Tara for so long transformed into a powerful symbol of hope. The revelation of her true identity, once a source of division and hurt, began to pave the way for healing. Marcus, though still wounded by the experience, saw in her words a genuine desire for transformation, a promise that the injustices of the past could be overcome if those in power were willing to listen and change. As the crowd slowly dispersed, the gravity of what had transpired lingered in the air like a fragile promise. Tara and Marcus remained standing in the quiet corridor, their conversation drawing to a close but leaving behind the seeds of a new beginning. I want to hear from you, Tara said, her voice soft yet resolute. Not just today, but every day moving forward. Your experiences, your voices, they matter. Let this be the start of a dialogue, not just between us, but throughout our entire community. Marcus exhaled slowly, his expression a mixture of lingering hurt and cautious hope. I will, and I hope that others will too. We all deserve to be heard, and we all deserve respect. I'm willing to work with you if you're willing to truly listen. In the days that followed, the story of that fateful flight spread throughout the community. News of the confrontation and the astonishing revelation that the flight attendant who had once rebuked a passenger was, in fact, the owner of the airline sparked heated discussions in cafes, on social media, and at town meetings. The airline, long seen as a monolith of corporate indifference, now found itself at the center of a transformative conversation about power, empathy, and the true meaning of leadership. Tara took swift action. Back at headquarters, she convened meetings with her senior staff, determined to overhaul the policies that had allowed prejudice and rigid protocol to eclipse compassion. She listened intently to the stories of employees and passengers alike, stories of hardship, of discrimination, and of small moments of kindness that had often been overlooked. With Marcus's words echoing in her mind, she began drafting a new charter for the airline, one that would enshrine fairness, accountability, and genuine respect for every individual. In a public address that was broadcast live to all employees and passengers, Tara stood before a gathered crowd of reporters, staff members, and community leaders. Her voice, though still carrying the weight of past mistakes, rang out with clear determination. Today, I stand before you not as a distant executive, but as one of you, a person who has shared in both the triumphs and the trials of our everyday lives. I have seen the pain caused by rules that fail to account for our shared humanity. I promise that we will rebuild our airline on the foundations of respect, empathy, and equality. This is not just a promise. It is a commitment to change that will be measured in every policy we create, in every decision we make, and in every life we touch. The address was met with a mixture of cautious optimism and skeptical applause, but marked a turning point. Over the following weeks, Tara worked closely with community representatives, employee advocates, and experts in social justice to transform the airline's practices. New training programs were instituted that emphasized cultural sensitivity and emotional intelligence, and a dedicated ombudsman was appointed to address passenger concerns directly. The once rigid system began to show signs of flexibility and warmth, small victories that promised a brighter future. Marcus, who had once felt isolated and dehumanized by his experiences, found himself invited to join a task force dedicated to reforming the airline's customer service policies. His initial reluctance gave way to cautious optimism as he saw firsthand the sincerity with which Tara and her team sought to make amends. In quiet meetings over coffee and long discussions in conference rooms, he and Tara forged a partnership built on mutual respect and the shared belief that change, though slow and often painful, was possible. As months passed, the legacy of that turbulent flight evolved into a story of redemption and growth. Passengers began to share stories of how their voices had been heard, of how their experiences had led to concrete improvements in service and safety. Employees, once bound by the unyielding constraints of outdated rules, felt a newfound sense of purpose and empowerment. And Tara, burdened no longer by the secrecy of her true identity, embraced her dual role as both owner and empathetic leader, a role that demanded vulnerability, honesty, and an unwavering commitment to justice. In quiet moments, Tara would reflect on that day, the day when every rule, every hidden truth was brought to light by the courage of a few determined souls. She remembered the pain in Marcus's eyes, the quiet encouragement from Samuel and Olivia, and the earnest hope in Nina's voice. And she knew that while the path to true change was fraught with challenges, it was a journey worth taking. Standing on the tarmac one crisp morning, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Tara took a deep breath and addressed a small gathering of employees and community members. Today, I invite you to join me in a new chapter, a chapter where every voice is valued, every person is treated with dignity, and every action is guided by the principle that we are all in this together. I ask you to share your thoughts, to hold us accountable, and to help us build an airline that stands as a model for compassion and integrity. Let our story be one of transformation, where the lessons of the past pave the way for a future defined by kindness and courage. Her words resonated far beyond the confines of that small gathering. They sparked discussions in living rooms, in boardrooms, and across social media platforms. People began to see the airline not just as a company, but as a community, a living example of how honesty, accountability, and empathy could reshape the world. The transformation was not instantaneous, but with each new policy, each open forum for discussion, and every act of kindness shown to a passenger in need, the seeds of lasting change took root. In time, the once turbulent flight became a symbol of rebirth, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could heal if met with genuine remorse and a commitment to do better. Marcus, whose initial confrontation had been born out of pain, eventually found himself sharing his own story of struggle and resilience at community events. His journey, marked by the scars of discrimination and the slow process of healing, inspired others to speak out and demand the change they deserved. The final chapter of this story was not marked by a grand final showdown, but by the quiet, persistent efforts of individuals determined to create a better world. Tara's journey from a flight attendant burdened by unintentional harm to an airline owner committed to transformative leadership became a beacon of hope for those who had long felt unheard. And in every corner of the airline, from the check-in desks to the boarding gates, from the cramped cabins to the expansive terminals, the echoes of that day served as a powerful reminder that true authority lies not in the enforcement of rules, but in the courage to listen, to learn, and to change. In the gentle hum of a new day, as the aircraft soared once again into a sky filled with endless possibility, the legacy of that fateful flight shone brightly. It was a legacy built on the belief that each of us holds the power to transform even the most entrenched systems of injustice, that every act of empathy has the potential to spark a revolution of kindness. And so, as you listen to this story, I invite you to reflect on your own experiences. Ask yourself, what would it mean to lead with compassion in your own life? How might you use your own moments of conflict as opportunities for growth and understanding? The journey of transformation is never easy. It requires that we face uncomfortable truths, that we challenge the status quo, and that we hold ourselves accountable for the impact of our actions. But it is precisely in these moments of vulnerability that we find our greatest strength, a strength that can change not only our own lives, but the world around us. As you step forward into your own day, remember the lessons of this story. Share your thoughts, engage in honest conversations, and let your actions be guided by kindness and courage. For it is in the quiet acts of defiance against injustice, in the willingness to listen to one another's truths, that we truly begin to build a future where every person is valued and every voice is heard. And so, with hearts full of hope and eyes set on a horizon of endless possibility, we leave this chapter behind, knowing that every ending is but the start of a new beginning, and that every act of courage lights the way toward a brighter tomorrow. If you found this story powerful, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Your support helps us bring more important stories to light.